The United States is building a rail tunnel under Yellowstone National Park. What could possibly go wrong? Let's ask some experts. The geological experts. There are active supervolcanoes here. The wildlife experts. Oh, they can just move their burrows. The environmental experts. They've already done studies. It'll be fine. And finally, the common sense experts. Are we crazy? That's why they're called experts, because they know things we don't. But what if they're wrong? What if this tunnel is actually a terrible idea? Well, then, it would be the biggest construction disaster in U.S. history. Yeah, bigger than the Hoover Dam collapse, bigger than the I-35W bridge collapse, bigger even than the New Madrid earthquakes. See, there's this Yellowstone supervolcano. Okay, yes, the world's most dangerous supervolcano. Yes, the site of 3 of the largest volcanic eruptions in the last 16 million years. Sure. Okay, so we're going to build a railway tunnel right underneath it. In the late 20th century, American freight traffic got really bottlenecked through the Rocky Mountains. So they started a project to create a faster, easier route for trains to get through the Rockies. In 1997, Congress approved the construction of a new rail line connecting the Union Pacific Railroad and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway through a 28-mile tunnel under the Continental Divide in Montana. The route was known as the proposed Burgess-Hiawatha, and after some delays from lawsuits and Native American protests, construction began in 2000. But in 2007, halfway through construction, the entire project was put on hold due to bankruptcy of the primary contractor. And since then, well, nothing much has happened. But in January 2021, BNSF announced they had restarted the project. The new contractor broke ground near the town of Nye, Montana, which is close to the park's northern entrance. The plan was to drill 2 tunnels from east to west under the Continental Divide at an elevation of about 6,000 feet. One would be used for freight traffic and the other for emergency vehicles and pedestrians. Now, in terms of tunneling projects, this isn't anything too insane. The longest rail tunnel in the US is over 26 miles long, and it goes under the same mountain range these new tunnels will go under. The longest underwater tunnel in the world is nearly 32 miles long, and it goes under the Baltic Sea. And the deepest underground structure ever constructed is nearly 12 kilometers deep, and it's called the Kola Super Deep Borehole. But none of those tunnels went under an active supervolcano. Yellowstone caldera is the site of 3 massive eruptions during the Pleistocene epoch. Around 2.1 million years ago, there was an eruption so large it blew the top off the Earth's crust and created a giant magma chamber beneath the North American continent. Scientists call it the Yellowstone hotspot. Then around 1.3 million years ago, there was another huge eruption, and then again around 640,000 years ago. These eruptions created the Yellowstone caldera, also known as the Yellowstone supervolcano. The last time it erupted, ash fell as far away as Mexico and Canada. If it were to blow again, the effects would be devastating. In 1985, the United States Geological Survey started monitoring Yellowstone when seismic activity in the area increased. They set up instruments to monitor earthquakes, ground deformation, gas emissions, and temperatures of various geysers. So we have a pretty good idea of what's going on under there. And so far it seems like everything's normal. But the thing is, it doesn't seem normal that there's a giant volcano under here. Like, yeah, sure, let's build a train tunnel under it. But like, how does a magma chamber stay magma? Like, how does a giant volcano not blow up? Now, I asked some scientists, and they basically told me that I'm stupid. So, here's what they said. Volcanoes don't just blow up because they're hot. Mount St. Helens in Washington is one of the most active volcanoes in the Cascades, but it didn't blow up when workers dug a highway right through its lava dome. It's all about pressure. If the pressure inside a volcano is greater than the pressure outside the volcano, then magma will push its way out and boom, eruption. But if the pressure is roughly equal on both sides, then the magma will just chill out. The key is that the pressure on the outside needs to be equal to the pressure on the inside. The weight of the rock above the magma chamber creates the outward pressure. As magma rises into the chamber, the pressure increases until the rock breaks and lets the magma out, When the magma chamber empties, the pressure drops, which relieves pressure on the rocks above the chamber, and they slowly creep back up, filling the void. This is called magma replenishment, and it's a closed-loop system. Magma comes out, chamber empties, rocks creep up, magma comes back down, and this cycle keeps the pressure roughly equal on both sides of the rock, so the volcano stays dormant. Think of it like a balloon. If you squeeze it, the balloon expands. If you keep squeezing it, the balloon eventually pops. But if you take your hand off the balloon, the pressure equalizes and the balloon shrinks back down. So if we were to dig a tunnel under Yellowstone, it wouldn't necessarily cause an eruption, but it could certainly trigger an earthquake. The rock layers surrounding the magma chamber could collapse, allowing magma to rise into the tunnel and cause a massive explosion. Well, not exactly. See, the rocks around Yellowstone aren't particularly strong. They're mostly rhyolite, trachyte, and tuff, which are all types of volcanic rock, so they're fairly brittle, and they tend to fracture easily, which allows groundwater to seep into the magma chamber. When water comes into contact with hot rock, it turns into steam, which builds up pressure and can cause explosions. In fact, this is how many of the geysers and hot springs in the park work. Steam from the magma chamber heats the groundwater, which builds up pressure until the water explodes out of a weak spot in the crust. So, if we were to dig a tunnel under Yellowstone, it would probably collapse and allow groundwater to flood into the magma chamber, causing a massive explosion. Wait, no, actually the water wouldn't reach the magma chamber. You see, the magma chamber isn't just a big open pit. It's actually filled with layers of solid rock. And although the rock is fractured, the fractures are filled with dense, viscous magma, not water. So if the tunnel collapsed, the water would just pool in the fractures and create a bunch of steam. So the explosion would come from the steam, not from water reaching the magma chamber. Not to mention, the magma chamber itself is almost entirely made of solid rock. Only about 10% of it is liquid magma. So even if the water managed to make it past the steam barrier, it wouldn't cause a massive explosion. Instead, it would just heat up the solid rock and turn it into magma, which would rise into the magma chamber and eventually erupt out of the nearest vent. It's very unlikely that digging a tunnel would cause an eruption, but what about earthquakes? Earthquakes happen when rocks suddenly shift, releasing energy in the form of seismic waves. The rocks around Yellowstone are already very weak, so it's unlikely that a tunnel would cause a significant earthquake. But what about if we accidentally hit the magma chamber with our tunnel boring machine? Well, that's extremely unlikely because before we even start drilling, we would first have to map out the magma chamber using seismic tomography. We can do this by recording the travel time of seismic waves as they pass through the crust. The waves travel slower through hotter rock, so we can use this information to create a 3D model of the crust and identify areas with high concentrations of magma. Once we know where the magma is, we can avoid it altogether. But let's say we accidentally hit the magma chamber. Well, the first thing that would happen is a sudden increase in temperature. The magma chamber is about 10 kilometers below the surface, so we'd have to drill almost twice as deep as the deepest mine in North America to reach it. And that's not easy. But if we did somehow manage to drill through, the temperature would be around 1,000 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the rock would melt and collapse, allowing magma to rise into the tunnel. The magma would flow downhill towards the nearest geyser basins, heating up the water and causing massive explosions. The magma would solidify as it makes its way to the surface, creating a new lava dome. And then the whole thing would repeat. So what do you think? Should we build the tunnel? It might be safe, but then again, it might blow up Yellowstone. I think we should let the experts decide. Because of their expertise, they're able to consider countless possibilities and calculate probabilities. And while they may not always be right, their predictions are often surprisingly accurate. Just consider all the people who bet against the housing market in 2008 only to lose everything. Experts predicted the crash, and those who listened made millions. But what if the experts are wrong? What if something unexpected happens and the tunnel causes an eruption? Well, then we'd have to evacuate the entire region and abandon all the towns near Yellowstone. Big Sky, West Yellowstone, Gardner, Cook City, all of them would have to be evacuated. The entire park would have to be closed for at least a year. Flights would be cancelled, roads would be blocked. Millions of people would have to change their travel plans. The economy would suffer. So it's not just about the eruption itself, it's also about the aftermath. And that's why I think we should be careful and make sure we have a plan in place just in case. It's better to be safe than sorry. Or as the old saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. Or as my Uncle Earl always says, never trust a smart guy in a white shirt. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new and hopefully I didn't blow up Yellowstone. If you want to see another video just like this one, check out the video.